I was talking to a coworker who is a pretty big wrestling fan, and he was very pro WWE, and this is right around the time where I was like really getting into AEW, and we're talking, and he's telling me, his concerns with AEW as a product and how they market themselves to a broader audience, and he broke it down in a way that I found was really interesting, and I encourage anyone, really think about these things, allow yourself to be, challenged on your current stance and opinions, because you never know, you might have your mind changed on some things, or you start entertaining different schools of thought. With that said, I hadn't really been too heavy into the WWE product. Now, I think I speak for a lot of wrestling fans when I say that changed big for a lot of us when Vince McMahon was officially done with WWE. He stepped down. He no longer has a spot in the company. He has nothing to do with creative as this investigation continues onward. Maybe I'll make a video talking about that, but I'm kind of waiting for the dust to settle and more information come out. Although I will say that it's not looking good for him, and it's not looking good for his buddy John Laurinaitis. But I will say this: since then, it's been announced that his daughter, Stephanie McMahon, is now going to basically co-CEO the entire company with Nick Khan, whereas I believe she's handling more of like the actual day-to-day product. And it was announced that Triple H was going to be the head of creative. Now, this got a lot of people talking because, remember, he was very quintessential in the black and gold NXT brand and how popular it became. And I know people like to get upset with Triple H and, go back to, how he used to bury people over a decade prior. And I said, listen, it's very obvious that the guy has done a lot of changing over the years, and it's very clear that his focus now is to make the product better by showcasing the talent and what they can do. He wants to get away from the gimmicky stuff. He wants to get away from the sports entertainment moniker. I mean, they actually allow people to say the word wrestling and wrestlers on air now, and since then, it's been about a month, maybe a little over a month since Triple H has had the helm. And so far, I think it's been fairly positive. I mean, it's still early to tell, but I like the fact that we're now referring to it as wrestling. We're getting away from sports entertainment. Oh, and just a little side note, I do find it funny that Chris Jericho's jab at WWE and calling it sports entertainment in AEW, I thought that was pretty funny. But I digress. I think he's doing good. I think there's more focus on like the talent and the wrestling. It feels more realistic. And when I say more realistic, I'm saying like they're not trying to go out there and win an Oscar, but understand that these are people who clearly have issues with one another, or that's how they're being presented to us, the consumer. So it really should feel more realistic, more gritty, a little more visceral, depending on like the severity of the story. And I've never understood how like anyone can take this kind of thing seriously when their storylines that they've had in the past are really dumb and cheesy. I mean, I don't want to get into that now, but anyway, I feel like there's more to like sink your teeth into. There's more there to really appreciate. I like how I feel like whenever there's something that happens backstage, I feel like it's like something that they will cut to from like the commentator's desk to, oh, this is what we just found going on backstage, rather than they're doing a backstage interview and you can clearly tell that they're planning this attack spot, and it happens right with everyone watching. Whereas, again, going back to my first point, feels a little more realistic. It's like, this is what's happening, and we're turning to it now, and that's what WWE used to do back in the day. I mean that was something TNA did a lot, and I like that because it's like you shouldn't be showcasing the whole thing as a feature-length movie. It's like, no, if this is really happening and you want an honest response from the people watching to make them feel something, don't show the follow-up, like, don't show the lead-up, the action, and then, like, the aftermath. It's like, there is so much disconnect going on there because people are watching it going, okay, who's going to attack them from behind? Where's the confrontation coming from? And I feel like there's more thought going into it. Then the big one, a lot of names coming back. The big one, Karrion Kross. He came back, and a lot of people are happy about that because he was one of those guys in NXT who at first no one really had a feeling on him, but then he was wrestling and the promo work and what he was doing, and he was really good. And then he got called up to main roster. Vince didn't know what the hell to do to him. First match on the main roster. Now this is a guy who went on a pretty sizable NXT championship streak, had lost the belt to Samoa Joe, I believe, or was it right around that time, gets called up to main roster, wrestles Jeff Hardy, who has been on a little bit of a losing streak, and ends up losing to Jeff Hardy. Karrion Kross, who easily has like what feels like a good half a foot, if not more, on him, and at least a good 75 pounds. Karrion Kross loses. Okay. Comes back out again. The following week, I believe he has him win, and then I think the third week he has him come out and he looks like a early Attitude Era character gimmick wearing a ridiculous costume, and he was released shortly after, and people are left scratching their heads. What is WWE doing? Like, you have a legit badass character, and they don't know how to book him, they don't know how to market him, and they're basically throwing a costume on him. People are mocking him relentlessly for it, and then he's gone shortly thereafter. So he's back, and looks like they're going to start putting him in a main event program, possibly with Roman Reigns after Clash at the Castle. We will see. It's nice to see more top main event players. We saw Hit Row returning, which was awesome, obviously without the addition of Swerve. He's currently one half of the AEW Tag Champs, so he ain't coming back. Let's see, who else? They're putting a lot more focus back on the women's tag team belts because shortly after Naomi and Sasha walked out, it was announced they're going to have a tournament, and then they just never mentioned it again. It was very obvious that was something that Vince had no real intention or consideration about, so it's pretty sad to think about. And now they announced that we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, and right off the bat, we got some solid teams in there. In the women's division, they're giving a little bit of a push to Shayna Baszler, which is about freaking time because she was like one of the baddest women in NXT while she was one of their longest reigning women's champions. And since she came up to main roster, they put her in one main event program with Becky Lynch right out of the gate, and then she was immediately banished to mid-card hell, where she hasn't done a whole lot of anything since. She did a brief stint as like part of a women's tag team with Nia Jax, and honestly I think that was the only other high point in her career. Since then, irrelevant. She didn't really do anything, which sucks because this woman is good. You're seeing Liv Morgan being presented a whole lot better, and I will argue that the finish at SummerSlam was very questionable because obviously the fans can spot a nonsensical finish from a mile away. So I don't know what was up with that. Maybe that was just a mistake. Mistakes do happen, but it's nice to see Liv be presented in a more predominant role because obviously she is a huge crowd favorite, and it was time to pull the trigger and let her run as champ until, the fans start getting away from her. So it's nice to feel like they're actually listening to the fans a little bit, whereas I felt like under Vince's regime, you you got that, but I felt like you didn't really get it until it was like WrestleMania time, maybe even SummerSlam time. Royal Rumble, there was some big plans, and now there's the focus on the mid-card titles, which is amazing. I have been saying this since the last WrestleMania video I did. There was no mid-card title defense at WrestleMania. That is an insult. United States Champion, Intercontinental Champion, neither of which were defended at Mania. So now they got a little bit of a U.S. title thing going on with Lashley. And I think him and his feud with Theory is about wrapping up. Obviously, because they want to put Theory into other things. But it's nice to see a guy like Lashley, who was a main event champion, holding a mid-card belt. I've always said that's a very strong thing, and John Cena kind of proved that. As much as you may want to hate the guy, but he brought a hell of a lot of recognition and relevancy back to the United States Championship when he did the United States Championship Open every single week. I like that. Hunter understands Kevin Owens better than Vince. Vince looked at Kevin Owens and said, "Oh, this guy he can talk and he's good at it. So I'm going to use him as a mouthpiece." And Kevin excelled at that. But Hunter knows that Kevin Owens is also a prize fighter, and he's a legit shooter. And that was a part of him that we hadn't seen in quite some time. Not since when he kind of debuted from NXT up against going back to John Cena. And we're seeing a little bit more of that Kevin Owens coming back. The guy who comes out there and he legit kicks a lot of ass. And we haven't seen that in quite some time. Been on a little bit of a losing streak. They constantly keep putting him on segments with Ezekiel, and that thing ran for months. And I'm like, yeah, it's funny, and yes, and it goes to show how versatile Kevin Owens is. He can be comedic, but he can be very serious, and he can wrestle. But we're only seeing one or two of those at a time, and we're not seeing the wrestling part. Now, granted, been told, dealing with some injuries, fine, cool, whatever. And Gunther holding up the Intercontinental title, and he's doing the best that he can, considering the fact that they basically just shoved him right into the SmackDown scene. I like that we're going to be getting at Clash of the Castle. I believe it's Sheamus and Gunther for the Intercontinental title, and I'm like, finally something for Sheamus to do. He has been in mid-card hell for a while. Give the guy something to do. He's a vastly underrated talent who knows how to wrestle, and he is good. And I think between the two of those guys, it's going to be a heavy hoss battle. It's going to be a hard-hitting, hard-kicking match. I'm expecting fireworks for that one. We're seeing guys like Dolph Ziggler is getting a little bit of a resurgence, which is great because the guy is an amazing wrestler. And I'm wondering what they're going to do this time, if anything at all. I'm just saying there's attention and care where it needs to be, and they're getting rid of a lot of the phony and fakeness, and I, for one, am happy, and it gives me more reason to turn into the product. Now, with that said, I will go on and say one thing, because at the end of the day, it's still a product, and anything can change. Anything can change. I don't think Vince is coming back, but the board can very easily override Stephanie and Nick even, and say, no, we can't market this. It's not as family friendly as it was. And that, who knows? That could play a role later on. It remains to be seen. I think, as of right now, it's going to stay the course a little bit. I think after 2022, if they're going to start reverting back to the way of old, that's when we'll find out. So, I got a little notification on my phone. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's my thought on that. Let me know what thoughts you have on it. Do you have thoughts on it? What do you think of the product? Are you watching more? Are you watching less? Let me know. I had one more thought on it. What else? Oh, yeah. I will say this as another positive. Because Triple H has always been a very hands-on guy, and a lot of people are worried about his health. I think it'll be fine. I don't see him ending up in any sort of like medical emergency that a lot of people are thinking he might. Honestly, if he stays out of the physicality part of it and more into the behind-the-scenes, head of creative, I think he'll be fine. He's obviously a lot more hands-on than I would say Vince is. Now, people have said that Vince has to oversee everything. True, but at the same time, I feel like Triple H also has an understanding of where the business is now compared to when Vince was, kind of calling it as it is, like 80s and 90s. So you can see it's a generational shift. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Again, let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you next time.